Goodness gracious. I didn't know you were, I didn't know I was gonna have people that fast. I'm trying to sit here to take my like my little my I'm sitting here posing for my thumbnail shot. I don't know. They make you do all these things. They make you jump through these hoops. So you were getting funny faces, Tom. Good morning. How are you? So we are just getting started. I call myself trying to start a little bit early. I started exactly 1 minute early. Not even exactly 1 minute early. I started 1 minute early. So, but I hope you're well. And we have some things on the agenda today. So I'm hoping that we're going to get to have some conversations with people about stuff. I'm hoping we're going to get some people in the queue. So starting off on the, I guess on the light note today, I'm going to go to the movies today. I'm going to go see the new the remake of the Blade Runner. I'm thinking the Ridley Scott, but it's not Ridley Scott. There's another director. The film had a different director, but I'm interested. I'm going to go see that today, and then I'll be doing a review of the new Blade Runner film. You guys know that I'm a sci-fi science fiction fan. I don't know, do people still use sci-fi? Dating myself, and I'm good company. So, so yeah, so that's on the agenda for today. What are any plans? Other plan? You have plans for today, Tom? I'm also feeling like while we're in here, like, should you just guess? Should we just have a little conversation so people will walk in and we'll already be like deep in it? Would you be up for something like that? I don't know. I don't even know if if you're set up for video chat. Something else, while I'm here in Brooklyn, I've arranged to do some more karaoke hosting. I don't know if people are interested in that at all. I think I showed some photos last week of the, I do some karaoke hosting, and the character is Dropsy Desmond. But I've been talking to people about upgrading my makeup. So I have all this old makeup. I have bags of old makeup that are just years and years old that it's time to start replacing. So I started looking for cruelty-free products. Now, can you hear me? I should actually check the sound because I wasn't able to hear. I'm able to hear things on my computer, but I wasn't able to hear someone who was broadcasting on YouNow. So before I run off at the mouth at all, let me ask the question. Can you hear me? So here I go running off. Anyway, so I found a website that listed cruelty-free and vegan products. Cruelty-free and vegan products. And started checking them out. And this was specifically cruelty-free and vegan products for, African Americans, people with dark skin like mine. And I found this company, I don't know if you can see, Hugh Noir, which is, I mean, they are a they list themselves as cruelty-free, which meant, they don't do animal testing. But then I told them that I was basically looking to do some get ready with me videos, and someone else said, hello, good morning, the white snake. Some get ready with me videos for the next time that I do Dropsy, and I'm actually going to take all my studio equipment. Good morning, Trey Legal. I'm going to take all of my shooting equipment, my camera, the lighting equipment. I'm going to set up in the dressing room. I'm going to do a whole start to finish, high quality, get ready with Dropsy. So the white snake, you're saying good morning, but I haven't verified that people can hear me. So can you Can you just let me know if you can hear me, people, if you're having any troubles hearing me? I also am not sure. I was hoping that we can get some folks guesting today, but I'm not sure what sound, if sound is working. I've got my headphones on, so that should do it. And other than my headphones, I don't have any other sound capability on this particular machine that I'm working on. Great, you can hear me. Wonderful. That makes me very, very happy. Great, thanks. So you guys came in the middle. I was talking a little bit about my search for cruelty-free makeup. But it turns out that companies who consider their products cruelty-free, one of them being YouNow, companies that consider their products cruelty-free don't consider their products vegan. And I'm not sure how can you have a product that's cruelty-free where if you've I don't know if it contains animal products. And so I have to maybe do a little bit more research and talk to some folks who know what they're doing about cruelty-free makeup. And I know that Mod Vegan has a video about cruelty-free psychics, cruelty-free products. I'm sorry, this is what I get. Veganista, good morning. While I was talking, I was reading your post down here, and it says yawn, waking up plans, cycling in the Cycle Via event. Thank you. I'm glad you can hear me. What is the Cycle Via event? Perhaps you can share maybe a link for those of us who don't know anything about it and would like to know more about the Cycle Via. My guess is that it's pronounced some like really cool way and I'm just mispronouncing it. Man, it's a little toasty. Y'all, it's October. We are deep in October. We're not quite a third of the way into, but we deep in October right now, and it is it's hot, y'all. And I'm concerned. I don't like this at all. So I'm not sure what folks want to do about that. So again, so I'm going to the movies later. I'm going to check out the new Blade Runner film. I believe it's Ryan Gosling is starring in the film, and I think Harrison Ford will make an appearance. And I'll be doing a review of the film. I might come home after and do a review. It depends on how light it is because my setup, I didn't bring all of my equipment here, so my setup is really, I can really only shoot in daylight or someplace that has already very bright lighting, and this apartment for lighting. Yeah, so y'all, last week, there was a lot last week, and I made a couple of videos, responding to, what happened in Las Vegas, and then kind of picked up the conversation talking about the Constitution, and I realized that it's time to get back in the Constitution, y'all. It's time to get back in the Constitution. I don't know how many people watching today are U.S. citizens, but if you haven't given the Constitution a read recently, it's a clunky read, y'all. It's a clunky read because it's full of anachronisms. I'm going to call them anachronisms, but it's full of language that when you read it, it's like, ooh, this clearly was not written for everyone. It still talks about things like servitude. It talks about, the way that we count in the indigenous folks, the folks who were here when the Westerners showed up, and the whole idea of 3/5 of a person. All of that stuff is still in the Constitution, and I know that the amendments are there to address some of that language, but like it might be time to just give the U.S. Constitution just needs a makeover. U.S. Constitution needs a makeover. And what's a little bit sad is that people really hold on to what is they hold on to the Constitution, not, yeah, sure, it protects us, right? It bestows on us certain rights that they say are, whatever, uh, certain rights, right? But when you look at those rights, there's no right to food, right? There's no right to access to basic resources. There's no right to access to the basic resources that people need to live: food, water, shelter. None of those things are included in our Constitution. And there, I guess there are some assumptions about the folks who are the framers, knowing that they had access to those things, right? Because they had the power, they had the might to go out and just take those things when they wanted them. But the average citizen of the United States is not guaranteed uh, the resources required to live. So you can be a citizen in the United States, you can be paying taxes and starve to death, or be incredibly ill and not have access to health care, right? None of these things are promised in the Constitution. So that's a little something that I thought might be some good conversation. Veganista 007 comes back with cyclavia, or cyclavia. Started in Bogota, Colombia. They closed down the streets for miles so that people can cycle. Awareness of environment and health. Oh, that sounds like a blast. So, Veganista, does that mean that you are in Colombia right now, or is the race taking place somewhere else? Cyclavia. It's spelled Cyclavia. So for the folks who want to look it up. Well, it certainly sounds interesting. It's 1:11 Eastern Standard Time, just saying, y'all. Make a wish. So we're into this, well, a little bit into this broadcast, and I'm just wondering what folks want to talk about, what people want to talk about this morning. I've thrown out a suggestion, conversations about, a general conversation about the Constitution. Did I say Columbus? Did I say Columbus? That was a Freudian slip. Bogota, Colombia. Yes. Um, it's in Los Angeles. We acknowledge Indigenous Peoples Day on Monday and not Columbus. Oh, okay. 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 I understand now. I should not read sentences backwards. Um, all right. So that's great. So it's in the Cyclopia is taking place in it is okay. And I'm guessing that is the event today, Veganista. And obviously, you are welcome to jump on here and tell us all about it, and be our guest today. And I just realized that it is that 3-day holiday here in the U.S. I think federal buildings or federal offices are closed tomorrow, um, and it is a day that generally is called Columbus Day. It is not. It's Indigenous Peoples Day in um, Los Angeles. Yes, that has been changed officially in for the city. I don't know. Has it been changed in the entire state of California, or is it just in the city of Los Angeles? But I wouldn't be surprised if that was a movement that didn't uh, pick up in a lot of different places. I think that, I don't know. I don't want to say that most people are pretty aware, but I feel like I don't know how many people are invested in Columbus Day as Columbus Day. I think people are just glad to have the day off from work, but I could see a movement to have that changed to Indigenous Peoples Day. But it seems to me like, it's not going to make really much difference in terms of indigenous people, or like people who were here who had things taken away and had treaties broken for centuries and have just been treated horribly. And but I don't know. I don't want to speak to people's experience that I don't know a lot about. I have folks that in my family that are from indigenous folk. But yeah, I mean, I've lived my entire life being recognized as African American, so I don't know that I don't, I certainly don't, I've never been, felt entitled to anything necessarily an indigenous person. But that is it's an interesting conversation that we could talk about in here. Maybe tomorrow would be uh, a day to maybe even talk about how that day came about, how we got that name. Trey Legal says, I like the idea of Indigenous Peoples Day. I also want Election Day to be a holiday so that everyone has a fair opportunity to vote. I agree with you, Trey Legal. Um, I think it's, yeah, I think it's pathetic that on this day where we're all supposed to be engaging, it's the one opportunity that I think a lot of people feel they even have to be engaged in um, politics, and it's taken away because they have to work. They can't afford to take the day off, or they would have to get up so early. They would have to get up so early to be able to vote. I remember when I was teaching a morning class in New Jersey. I would get up to be the first person at the polls when they opened, so that I would be able to get to work on time. And I knew that my commute was sometimes 3 hours, and I knew that by the time the day ended and I took a train and I traveled for 3 hours to get back home, I would have been likely too exhausted to try to get to the polls. And okay, so Veganista comes back. Um, Trey Legal says, but not that voting is the end all and be all. Well, we're going to have a lot of this. Yeah, we're going to be talking a lot about the political process here in the United States, and we're going to be talking. I think on this channel, I'm going to be talking a lot about the Constitution in weeks and months to come, just because I'm a little fed up with some of the rhetoric around the Constitution. Veganista 007 says, yes, today, LA, it has it about 4 times a year. It's pronounced ciclavia, well, ciclavia, and I'm not sure where the stress goes. Ciclavia. Yeah, y'all look it up. So, so that's where we are today. So, we're about 20 minutes into the broadcast, and I've thrown out some ideas for topics. Still really, really interested in whatever you guys are what you guys would like to talk about. Also regarding the Constitution, Trey Legal says also regarding the Constitution, it's really baffling that we practically worship this document written 300 plus years ago. Well, this is one of the things that came up in my last YouTube video. Um, it really is starting to me. It starts to get, when you want to talk about regressive, when we hold on to this language that was written, drafted in 1787, I believe the Constitution. And I believe the Constitution in 1987, it was 200 years old. So it's 200 plus years old. Not two, it's heading for 250. But it was this group of privileged individuals who owned land that had been taken from other people, who owned human beings that had been taken from their land. Um, yeah, in my video, I said it was I threw out 400 years. When you're trying to do the math for all these things, numbers get thrown around and you start talking about stuff. But yeah, the 1787 is the Constitution. The Declaration of Independence is 1776, and then the Constitution was about 10 years later. Yes, exactly. So it's like all of these things, but these things are connected, right? But these processes begin, right? The privilege that grew out of, coming in and taking the land of indigenous people and colonizing this place that is now called the United States of America. And then very shortly after that, it was less than 20 years after landing here that we started instituting slavery as a process. We had indentured servants. We had people who were here that were, as as part of the, the penal system, who were sent from England as part of the penal system. So we had the exploitation of a lot of people, and none of those people were being considered when the Constitution was being written. When they said "we the people," they were talking about the mofos that was in that room. They were not only were they not talking about everybody, they were really talking about the people who were in that room. We the people were the folks who were the folks who were there drafting that document. Everybody who counted was in that room having a say, right? And the whole idea of delegates and the way, the president is elected, all those things, they weren't talking about everybody having a vote. They were talking about, there was a group of people who would be empowered to do whatever it was that they needed to do to make sure that they were being taken care of. And so, yeah. Veganist says, I've been saying for the past 10 years that the Constitution needs to be rewritten. It's a living document, right? And yet it's not growing. It's not growing. It's getting dusty. And I'm going to say there's probably a lot of people who talk about the Constitution who haven't read it, who don't even know what's in that document. They haven't read it. Civics is no longer taught in schools, at least as far as I know. So people don't even understand the way our political system is structured. So it's just, it's out of control. So I started digging into the Constitution, y'all, a couple of days ago. So I think I'm gonna be doing some videos just on the Constitution, like what it is, how it's set up, how it's structured, where you can look for certain things. And I'm gonna look at I'm gonna look at the several sections, the main sections that lay out the structure of our government, and how people can become members of Congress, can become part of the legislature, can become part of the executive branch, or can be elected president, or can become part of the judicial branch. I'm going to talk about all those things in, like I said, weeks and months to come. And I'm going to try to do it like bite size so that it's nothing overwhelming, but so that people can feel comfortable having these conversations about the Constitution. One thing that I'm not going to talk about is what were the intentions of the framers of the Constitution, right? It's not important. They weren't thinking about us. So it's no reason for us to be trying to honor them. Right? There's no reason for us to try to honor the framers of the Constitution. They were engaged in things that they didn't have any business being engaged in when they created that document. The only reason that we need to talk about the Constitution at all is that it is the formative document of the United States, right? Is where we sort of what makes the United States are the words on that paper. That's why we have to pay attention to it. And the rules and the rules that the rules for governance are embodied in that document. And then everything else is a free for all. The states have room, different municipalities have the rights to have, certain policies in place, have certain regulations that are in place, and violations and things like that. All that stuff can happen on a personal level. But I think it is super, super important that people, if you're regardless of the country that you come from, is to understand what is the founding document. What are the founding documents? Because that's really what it stands. That's what the country stands for. Everything else is lip service. What the United States is all about is contained within the Constitution. Everything else is lip service. And the Constitution can show you where there were serious shortcomings in terms of care of the nation. Because that document doesn't look out for everybody. That document looks out for certain people. And then the document can also tell you, where the values were as far as folks. I mean, the Constitution spells out very clearly that titles of nobility, no one would receive titles of nobility, right? So if you want to say, like, that document was a reactionary document, right? They were putting the fact that nobody's going to be king up in this piece, right? And they're saying that because they were coming out of a situation where they were paying, forced to give, to honor someone, see someone as, somehow above everyone else as a noble, right? And part of the idea of being the king is that you were next to God. All these religious things and the separation of church and state, those were things that were really important to the framers of the Constitution because of the type of exploitation that they were stepping out of. So when we look at that document, we look at it as a reaction to something. But now, when we look at it today, we have to think about what is necessary for us to maintain a society as it is today, right? It's not 20 people, right? It's not 20, 30 people in a room who can all come up with these things together. We need a different way. All right. So, Veganista says, yes, you pronounced ciclavia correctly. I gave no stress in any of those syllables. So I was trying to be really, really careful. Trey Legal says, by white men who considered black people and other native people to be, yeah, it's actually, the language is right there in the document, how people, when we're talking about counting the number of people in states, that certain individuals would be considered 3/5 of a human being, right? So, I've been saying for the past year, we did this. People on the right and the left laud this document that has no power other than what people give it, which is a governing power, right? But how, it's just like religion, right? People pick and choose. The right to bear arms is lauded so high above other things, right? That's like the right to bear arms, freedom of speech, right? But we actually don't see, when we talk about the right to bear arms, what does that mean? Is the right to bear arms the right to protect oneself? The right to, to pick up a gun and go out there and like do what you need to protect yourself? Or does it mean that you will have a tool that's necessary to protect oneself? I don't know. Not to protect oneself, to get food, to have access to food, whatever that means. What does it mean? What is the right to bear arms? And does it mean that somebody, can I have a nuclear weapon? Right? So it doesn't mean across the board that I'm allowed to have whatever I want to have, any destructive weapon that I want to have. And so for us to talk about what that means specifically and spell it out so that there can be some kind of regulation when we're talking about these things that are so harmful. And it's reasonable. To get into a car, you have to go through a certain level of education, right? You have to go through a certain amount of education, right? You have to do a certain amount of study, and you have to take a test. You have to be a certain age, and there are a lot of laws that you have to follow. And then in terms of the car itself, every year that car has to be inspected. So they make sure when it comes to that vehicle, and the reason I believe that we are so careful around driving is that there are so many accidents. And we want to keep people safe. And so we create regulations around driving in order to keep people safe. We don't do that around our guns in the United States. We don't take those measures around our guns, and yet people are killed by guns in accidents because they don't know how to use them, right? And they didn't know how to maintain them in ways that were safe. So yeah, so we're there, right? So people are basically, we understand that it's a 200-year-old, bunch of white dudes got together and they created this language, primarily to be able to protect their assets and their asses too, right? And so, people, I understand people are saying, people don't want to feel the sense of being ruled by this, particular privileged group, and what would give any group the right to lay down a law that was going to turn around and be used to subjugate people 200 years later, 200 plus years later, right? People, some people said, so Robert, first of all, Robert Rose Jr., Robert and Rose Jr., welcome to the broadcast. Robert says, boy, you social justice people don't realize how you are being used by the liberal leftists to accomplish to accomplish their agenda of complete big government contra. I don't even know what this is, Robert Rose. I myself am born again conservative. I don't know what that means. So, in terms of big government, so Robert, I'm guessing what you're saying is that you're a big fan of the Constitution and what? I'm not sure what that means. So, yeah, because I don't think anybody in this room has particularly spoken to a political affiliation, but I'm not sure. We're gonna figure out. The Conservative Republican Party was started by Black Americans. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, so no, Robert, you got to go back and do your work. I think you might be. Are you talking about the Federalists? Who are you talking about? Who are you talking about? Are you talking about the Republicans who, that the party of Abraham Lincoln? None of these things. These, come on now. 200 years ago, like what politics was 200 years ago. People 200 years ago thought it was okay to to own slaves, right? People in this day and age are very, very different, right? And so we have seen politics shift left, right, what have you. But you know what I mean? Anybody who's still holding on to, I think, traditional left-right politics, anybody who's holding on to traditional Democrat Republican politics is, I think, in this day and age, you're a dinosaur. You're a dinosaur and haven't caught on to the fact that these are just two, platforms for a lot of this and not very much of like what needs to get done, right? None of these parties is out here talking about what we're going to do to, you know, deal with the fact that certain people are abusing the environment, right? Exploiting the environment to the point where we have all these greenhouse gases and right, the fact that it's 80 degrees and it's we're heading to the middle of October, right? So I don't know what you're talking about here. So I don't know who you're talking about. Make it clear who you're talking about so we can have a conversation. How could the Republican Party be formed by black people when we didn't have rights? Yeah, exactly, exactly. Thank you, Trey Legal. Thank you for calling that out. Thank you for calling that out. It's just silliness, right? It happened after the Civil War. Plenty of video about it on YouTube. Baby, don't get your information from YouTube, Robert. Plenty of information on YouTube. Well, there you go. There you go. I don't know what happened to me. The Second Amendment is for prevention of a tyrannical government takeover. So that's what you think. So you think that the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms is to prevent a tyrannical government takeover. Yeah, okay, all right. I feel you. However, in the, historically, when we've seen people rise up, for example, if you look back at Bacon's Rebellion, right? This is some time before that, right? People, took their guns and they rose up, but they called in the British to squash that down, right? So the ruling class has been able to do that. Do you believe that there are any group of people who could organize themselves with some pistols and automatic weapons and all that stuff that could not be instantly crushed by a tyrannical government if the United States government decided that it wanted to be run as a tyranny, right? Right? Do you think that, do you know what I mean? These are people who have their, fingers on launch codes, right? So there's, people in the military, right? And so who do you know who's ready to stand up against the army if the army comes after you behind, right? So we've seen places like Waco, right? So no, I don't think that the Second Amendment is really about, is in this day and age ever going to be about the prevention of a tyrannical government takeover, right? Because we're talking about people with planes and helicopters and the most advanced technology to be able to put down any type of armed rebellion, any type of an armed rebellion. So it's foolish, right? So, um, so yeah. So again, where's your information? Cite your sources. Bring stuff. Don't get your information from YouTube, man. I'm guessing you're probably a young person. I'm gonna guess that you're a child and leave it at that. But so we were having this conversation about the the Constitution, right? So we're talking about the fact that this is a document that needs to be revisited because it confers very little by way of actual rights in terms of like what is necessary to survive, right? If you really want to talk about how people could be armed, right? How people need to be armed to defend themselves, it's through information, right? People need access to the info. People need access to the information. People need access to an educate, to, people need to be able to educate themselves. People need access to resources to be able to educate themselves, right? But right now, we take our young people and we warehouse them in these institutions that are not capable of doing the job well. But if you don't go, right, you're in trouble, right? It's a crime not to have your child attend school, right? You can homeschool them, but you have to have your child in school in some way. And you're ultimately going to have to answer to this body that says whether or not your child is learning what they're supposed to be learning, right? So let's be real about what is really required for a society to thrive, and does the Constitution provide for what's necessary for a society to thrive? Or are there just some platitudes thrown at us? Oh, you have the freedom of speech. You can stand up and say whatever you want to, but you can't grow your own food, right? You can't even build your own house because they would get the building inspectors would come and shut down your house, right? Right. Ooh, Robert Rose Jr. says you act like a homosexual. Darling, I am a homosexual. Um, and then Robert was gone. So no housing, no food, no healthcare, right, Trey Legal. So you're with me along those lines. So we're served all of these, baubles that we're supposed to feel are. We're served all these baubles that are supposed to make us feel good. And honestly, like, come on, you can who cares? Who the ability to express myself, to be able to express myself shouldn't be given to me, right? That shouldn't be given to me. That should just be, right? I have a voice. We communicate with each other, right? So the freedom of speech to be able to criticize the government, why is that? That's not an added value. That's something that I should have. And what is assumed is a kind of tyranny. And here are the places where we're going to be allowed some freedoms, right? As opposed to being free and then respond, being free. And so again, without looking at people's basic ability to be able to live in a society, and the society that we live in now we're so regulated in every breath and every step that we take. We're so regulated that it costs to just live. You can't go make your way. You can't go live off in the woods. There's no woods. There's no woods, right? So we're not guaranteed even, you know, to be able to live. The for a mother to be able to give birth to their child, there are some needs, right? There are some basic needs, and we're not guaranteed those things. So you're not guaranteed a day of life as a human being. You are not guaranteed a day of life. In fact, it is quite the opposite. You have to pay for that. You have to pay to be able to live. You have to pay to be able to exist. And to me, that is not freedom. That's a transaction. That is a transaction. So, Veganista says, why are those people so angry? LOL. No, I think that another part of it, I think another reason that it's time to really start having these conversations about the Constitution is it's the last stronghold. It's the place where when we get smacked in the face with the Constitution, our reason tends to go out the window. And so you can have the ACLU, and it's not like I have anything against the ACLU, but you can have the ACLU proud that they're defending, the Nazis to be able to go and march, right? And that's seen as a noble action because it protects this freedom that's given to us in the Constitution, right? But the fact of the matter is that the freedom to be able to speak is not really conferred on us by the government, right? People don't. It's like the government does not really regulate speech. Speech is regulated through informal social controls. So when you say something, the way that your neighbors respond, the way that people in your classroom respond, the way that your parents respond, those are where our freedoms to express ourselves come from. And those are um, moderated by an ideology that is maintained through state-controlled mechanisms like the school, right? The church is not state-controlled, but this, the state recognizes the church, right? So the church the state bestows on the church certain freedoms that allow it to exist uh, within the state, right? Within the context of the state. But, in sports, in the media, right? All of these things ultimately are controlled by the state. And if you don't believe they're controlled by the state, then look who controls the airwaves. Look who controls access to the airwaves, right? What airwaves ultimately. So to some extent, we are fooled into thinking that we have these freedoms because the state's not going to come in and tell you that you can't have that march, or the state isn't going to come in and tell you how many guns that you can have. But ultimately, it's people, right? It's the people around us who are controlled through the ideologies that are maintained through certain mechanisms, right? That the state does control. So, the state funds things that it doesn't control, like the arts. You know, if you look at the art, your typical arts organization, that arts organization is being funded by either corporations or the state, right? Major corporations, the foundations that are major corporations or the state, or old money, right? The relatives, the ancestors of the framers, of the original framers of the Constitution. So Trey Legal says, right, the idea of living off the grid is a privilege is a privilege within itself, right? Yeah, if you have enough money, you can set yourself up to live off the grid. That's going to cost you, right? The startup costs are enormous, right? You can't live for free. You can't live for free is a sad statement, and internalize the present when life is freely given to us, right? So I mean that's and I wish we could talk about this. I mean, if you certainly want to jump on, and we can make more of a conversation of this. But yes, this idea that it is not free to live, um, to go, even to get someplace where one could eke out some kind of an existence for themselves, it would cost you to get there, like just even getting there. Um, and there's no land where people can just be. It's all owned, right? It's all owned right now, and some of it is owned by the state. And it's interesting. I always find it like when I'm in the city and I see a sign that says government property, keep out. Government property, trespassers will be prosecuted. And I'm like, wait a minute, the government is the people, isn't the government? What? It doesn't make sense, right? So the ideology around like who the government is, the government as this group is this big strong person that's them. The government is them, right? As opposed to the government being us, the representatives for us. And so, yeah, I guess that's another conversation to have. And maybe there's some documentaries out there where people are doing stuff. But even like the tiny house movement, I always find that kind of interesting. For the people in the tiny house movement, they have these tiny houses that are awesome. And but to get that tiny house, you have to have a plot of land for it to sit on. So, or if you're moving, you have to be able to you have to have a vehicle that you maintain to move it around. So yeah, this is an interesting. It's an interesting state of affairs. I'm looking down here. It looks like Captain Andy has a new video. I think I'm going to check out later on and maybe talk about it next week. Um, Oh, I hadn't said anything about it, and my knee-jerk reaction was to feel happy about it, but now I found myself waking up this morning annoyed. Apparently, there is a new McDonald's has a vegan burger. This is for the vegans in the crowd. You guys know most of my stuff is focused centers around or at least veganism is woven into like most of the things that I'm talking about. So McDonald's has a new vegan burger that they're premiering, and I think it might be in Finland, in not the capital of Finland, but it's basically premiering. It launched like last week or something, so they're trying it out. And I saw a few videos with folks doing taste tests in Finland, and it seems like it's a cool thing. And Mod Vegan made a video about this yesterday. And I was really excited when I heard about it. It was like, okay, this is great. So like now people who go to McDonald's will have, vegan options. But I'm like, why are we going to McDonald's? Why is anybody going to McDonald's still? Um, like, can McDonald's just go away? And I know that they employ a lot of people at minimum wage. They employ a lot of people who then have to be on welfare. So McDonald's, I guess, is the indirect recipient of welfare now because they're not paying people enough to live. So, Chichikov, welcome. Good morning. Chichikov says we need to ask what creates wealth rather than take it for granted and demand to know why it hasn't, and I'm guessing hasn't been distributed evenly. I don't even get into to conversations about the distribution of wealth. It makes me uncomfortable because when we talk about wealth, I always feel like we're talking about the results of past exploitation, right? That's been built up. Somebody was exploited for somebody to be able to build wealth. Somebody didn't get somebody didn't get their fair share to begin with for people to acquire wealth. Chichikov. So that when we talk about the distribution of wealth, I feel like even like for me to sit in this apartment, I'm always a little bit uncomfortable because I'm like, ooh, whose space is this? Who would be here if somebody didn't get murdered a couple centuries ago? Who would actually be in the space? What would be here now if someone hadn't been murdered? And I feel like the default is that, oh, so we wouldn't have all this, society wouldn't, the world would not have evolved in some place, blah, 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 blah. The assumption is that without all the violence that has taken place over the last however many years, we wouldn't have, a society that functions how, whatever. But I always feel a little bit like when we talk about wealth, we're talking about a lot of, we're talking about the accumulation of a lot of sins, if you'll allow me to use that kind of terminology to talk about it. So I don't want to get into conversations about the redistribution of wealth. I want to look at like the world that is and how do we deal with it, right? Not talk about it in terms of wealth, but talk about it in terms of this particular space that we happen to exist on, and we coexist on it with people who don't have voices, right? Animals and all kinds of folk, right? Who don't get to speak. And we're sitting here trying to coexist, but I don't think that we think about ourselves as coexisting because anytime we're ready to, we just go and pave over a huge swath of land, killing everything in that area, right? Taking away the habitat of everything. And how do we actually start to look at the world as, this is just the place where our feet have where our feet landed. And in that space, there are certain things that we need. We need food. We need shelter. We need water. We need clean air, right? And we need safety. And perhaps if we keep going, we might discover that we need community and that we need love. I don't know, or we need to get in terms that Paulo Freire uses in Pedagogy of the Oppressed, we need to fulfill our ontological vocation to be more human or to be fully humanized. whatever that means, right? So those are things like I would rather have those conversations and not start with some solution that some folks came up with around, around the time that they were coming up with the Constitution, perhaps. I don't know. They came up with a system to deal with a particular set of problems. And that was how they were going to capture value from things in a way that, regardless of their proximity to that thing, um, it would be recognized. Their ownership would be recognized. So when we talk about wealth, I feel like we're talking about symbols and we're talking about ideology. It's a belief in this thing, that's value that we lend to a certain thing so that we can then honor it in those who have it. Jordan FR, how are you? Welcome. Good morning to the broadcast. Jordan FR says dentists are so expensive, even with insurance. Yes, it's true. I have dental insurance, and I started going to a dentist a little while ago, and I was like, wait a minute. I was paying out of pocket what I assumed stuff cost. I was paying out of pocket what I assumed things cost. And I was just thinking to myself, wow, what kind of a racket is this? And I think part of that has to do with insurance, right? We all, pay these high insurance premiums, and then when you use when you just it means that people can afford to pay more because they're paying, because the insurance company is paying, and the insurance company wants to charge more, so the insurance company is willing to pay more. Yeah, it's a little out of control. So Jordan FR is in France. Is the FR about you being in France? And are you indeed French? Are you a French citizen? And is your healthcare, uh, does it come from the state, or how is it that you have access to healthcare? Jordan FR. Chichikov says, if you're lucky and you look after yourself, I don't think you need to go to the dentist very often. Oh, you must be young. Chichikov, you're young. Say that to the 50, say that to the 40, 50, and 60-year-olds in the room, 70-year-olds in the room. It's a whole other thing. Doctors and dentists are too hungry for money. Chichikov says it's a big scam. It's a big scam. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I just know that when I do go to the dentist, it's I end up paying out of pocket what it seems to me that things should cost. Like to get your teeth cleaned or what have you. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. So here we are. We just have a few minutes left to go in the broadcast, and man, we've talked about a lot of, we've talked a lot. We've talked a lot. I don't know if we've come to any types of conclusion, but I certainly have run my mouth. There's still a little bit of time if somebody wants to jump on and just say hello to folks. I'm always interested in meeting new people as well. We have just a little while left in the broadcast, and then I'm meeting some really cool friends for, I guess we're calling it brunch, but I probably won't be eating any of the food there. So yeah, I guess the last thing that I was talking about was this McDonald's thing. So yeah, why is anybody going to McDonald's? So although I was excited when I saw Mod Vegan's video about the vegan burger at McDonald's, and the idea that the word vegan is actually in the sandwich, and that's, I think, good news. But I don't think anybody's walking into McDonald's and coming out with anything that's going to be good for them ultimately. So, and there's also the exploited workers, right? So when you go to McDonald's, why do we want to help McDonald's improve their business model by serving better food so that they can continue to exploit people and, serve food that is bad for people? So I don't know. So it's good. I think it's good. I think it might be ultimately good for veganism to have this sandwich out there with the word vegan in it, for normalizing it. But the fact that it's McDonald's is not, it's not that great. It's not that great. So, yeah, they're saying that the mercury silver amalgam was safe very recently. Maybe they still do. They have no credibility. Um, and I'm not sure what you're talking about. I'm not talking. I'm not. I think that you're talking about something that's at the dentist. Jordan says that it's target marketing. They probably chop up bits of rainforest and put it in a bun. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So if McDonald's was all vegan products, they'd probably figure out a way to do it so that it was the most destructive process possible. And I hate to say that and to come off this person who just like hates McDonald's for the sake of hating McDonald's, but I don't know if anybody has seen the film Founder, but from its inception, from the time that it was like sort of taken out of the hands of the McDonald's brothers and Ray Kroc did their thing, it's sort of been a little bit of a corrupt venture, a little bit of a corrupt venture. So, so that's that. Chichikov, you're cracking me up. They chop up bits of the rainforest and put it in a bun. So, yeah. So we'll see about that. So again, for those of you who missed the beginning of the broadcast, just to put out some things that are coming up. So I'm going to be hosting some karaoke at the end of the month. If you happen to be in Brooklyn, join me at Hope and Anchor on October 27th. That's a Friday. It won't be me. It'll actually be a character that I do, Dropsy Desmond. And so those of you who are in the know, I am looking for vegan cosmetics. I'm looking for some and vegan cosmetics that would be useful for a person in my skin tone, y'all. Don't mess me up. Don't have me out here looking like a clown. I'm trying to be glamorous. So yeah, looking for vegan products, and I will likely do feature those, and I'll do a sort of a get ready with me video around that. So look for that October 27th, and so that week you'll be seeing that video. I'm also gonna go to the movies today. I'm gonna go and catch this Blade Runner, and I can't think of it. It's like Blade Runner 2047, something 46, something like that. I don't know. But I'm gonna go check it out, and I'll likely be doing a review of that film. If you guys do happen to follow me on Snapchat, and I believe that you can access my other social media from my page. But yeah, you can. I think I'm like NYND, NYIND. So it's New York and Detroit. I think that's my handle. But if you put in my name, you'll probably find me. You guys can follow me on Snapchat, and I don't do a lot of snapping, but I do post whenever I'm up to something. And so if like you want to, I might snap while I'm like at the movie. I won't snap the movie though. But yeah, I plan to be doing a little bit more snapping. So if you want to follow me there, please do. You can also follow me on Facebook. It's just my name, Rich Flowers, on Facebook. And if you ever want to follow me on Instagram, I'm alt space Detroit. And you can also visit. I kind of do some vlogging, a couple of articles a year on my website, Alt Space Detroit. I'm saying all this to get this in here just to fill some time, y'all, because it's hot and I'm starting to get a little spitzy. But that said, it's been cool hanging out with y'all this morning. And again, please do look for, I'm going to be doing a video series around the Constitution, just talking about the structure of the Constitution and what's in it and breaking that down for people so people can be more familiar. So if you're a US citizen and you don't know what's in the Constitution, check out my YouTube channel over the next couple of weeks, and I'll be doing videos starting next week. So, what does it say? Veganista says, I hear the cyclist out there having fun in Ciclavia. So I'm about to make my plant-based chocolate banana protein smoothies and partake in the all-day event. Please enjoy, enjoy. And I don't know, I don't know, Veganista, I don't know if you are Instagramming or anything like that, but yes, we will see you next week. So do enjoy that and ride safely. So that's it for this video. Those of you watching it on YouTube, like this video if you like it, share, comment, subscribe. This is Reg signing off. Love yourselves. Peace.